All right, greetings. Greetings, welcome. So today this is a special edition. For those of you who are in Intro to Environmental Science, this is like a basically the icing on the cake of what we've learned. We talked about food resources, and now I have an expert who is going to talk to you about food resources, specifically aquaponics and aquaculture. I'm not going to give too much away, but this is a great follow up to what we've covered. For those of you who are not in Intro to Environmental Science, um, I want to invite you into the world of fish and food and kind of being sustainable, not always relying on the grocery store and so forth. We will also highlight this when we cover animal diversity. And then for those of you who are in my lab, well, you've already built hydroponic systems, and some of you have fish tanks. So a lot of this is going to be highly relevant to what's been covered in my classes or in my classes and labs or lectures and labs. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. George Brooks. I actually met him at an aquaponics conference. Yes, we have conferences on aquaculture and aquaponics. This was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I mean, I was really inspired by his presentation. I knew at some point after listening to him talk about his work, I was like, have to figure out a way to get him to speak to students. And so here's my opportunity. Black History Month. We have a seafood. Uh, we have a seafood theme year, and so he did earn his PhD at the University of Arizona, Tucson. And so, with that being said, thank you, Dr. Brooks, for being our guest speaker. And I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you. Wow. I don't know if I can fill all those shoes that you gave me there. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Um, Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here, and thank you, Mr. Claiborne, for inviting me. It was good to meet you in Tucson. And just for the record, the next meeting of the World Aquaculture Society in the United States is going to be in 2 weeks in Las Vegas. And I will be giving some papers there. And it's always a lot of fun. It's right on my wife's birthday, and it's our chance to travel the country while I do my fish thing. So, with that, I'm looking forward to your questions when you get them later. And in fact, if I can here, I'm going to turn on the uh, PowerPoint. Oh, oh my goodness, I have two of them open. That's wrong. Okay, here we go. Let me make sure this is the right one. It's not moving. Why isn't it moving? There we go. All right, let's move this back. All right. What I'm going to be presenting to you today, and I'm looking forward to your questions later. I have personally always had an interest in the technology of aquaculture, and aquaculture is the farming and husbandry of aquatic animals and plants. But most recently, I've become actually more interested in what good things that you can do with this technology, not just grow fish or grow plants, but how can you apply all of the things that you can do with this technology to benefit mankind? Or in my case, as you'll learn in a few minutes, how can we use it to feed people in cities to mitigate food insecurity? And so my title today is Urban Aquaponics and Community Food Industry Development. And my subtitle, there we go, and in that it is African American History Month. And my father was a preacher, and that is making a way from no way, how to feed a city from your backyard in 2026. So with further ado, and I'm glad that you're recording this, let me get started. The idea of feeding a nation from backyards is nothing new. Back during World War I and World War II, there was a concept called the war gardens. The idea was that the major food producers were sending all of their food to the war effort. And so they were encouraging and successfully people in the cities and people in the small towns to grow their own food in their backyards, and not just a little bit of food, but enough food to have a significant impact on their daily food budget. Um, the kinds of foods that were grown included beets and beans and broccoli and cabbage and everything literally that you can think of. And it was done in farms like what you see on the screen, which is a 15 by 25-foot farm. The challenge we have today, because we might need to do this again, is that few people in urban areas, like I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, as I said, when you never think about Phoenix, but Phoenix is the fifth largest city in the United States, and it has a lot of people I live in the urban area, but plus there are many food deserts there that I will get into, and most of those folks do not have this size of a space to put in a farm to grow their own food. So that's just a thought to get you thinking. That's terrible, about this concept of growing food for the people in urban areas using urban agriculture. But Mr. Claiborne asked me to say something about my family, which I appreciate. I'm not going to belabor, but this is my wife, Angela. Amazing person she is. She is an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. She has a healthcare agency, but she also is an amazing farmer. She was the one who literally convinced me to focus on urban agriculture seriously, because well, she kept bringing in all of this food from a 10 by 10 foot square garden in her backyard. And when I asked her how much was this saving us, I was impressed by the number, and it's all been uphill or downhill, but this is something wonderful from there. Next, these are our four wonderful daughters. This picture is about 10 years old, but it was the only one I had with them all together because they're all grown up and scattered to the wind, from Los Angeles to one was in Hawaii, one's here. But this is Haley on the left, Andrea, Amanda, and our baby, Hasina. But now, my parents had a dream also. This affected me tremendously as an adult. They always had a dream about how they can help people in whatever the circumstance that it was. In this case, this picture is of Dr. Martin Luther King at Sky Harbor International Airport in Phoenix, Arizona in 1963, I believe, and his entourage around him. To the left on the screen of Dr. King is Dr. Lincoln Ragsdale, a prominent businessman in Phoenix. And the gentleman with the glasses on is my father. And we even have a recording that took place later in the day of him speaking at one of the, Dr. King speaking at one of the local churches, which my dad's name was actually mentioned, and him was thanked. And that's good for our family archives to see what Daddy actually did. He had a dream. He was moved to Phoenix from from New York City by his church, Presbyterian, to found a church in Phoenix, Arizona. He looked around that church and he decided that the children there were not ready for a kindergarten. He wrote a program, took it to Washington, D.C., and he came back as that being one of the center points of Head Start. There are many other points about him, but we are very proud of what he did. But then there's Mama. Mama was a hidden figure level scientist. The hidden figures were not only shooting rockets into space, but in her case, she was in an area of science called mycology. There is a very virulent disease that's still present in Arizona called valley fever. She was the one. If you can't grow the disease in the laboratory, you can't cure it. She was the one who discovered the way to grow it in the laboratory. They still haven't cured it, but all the research money that is going into this area of study still today is based upon her research. After that, she wanted to left that so she wouldn't bring it home to her children, my sister and I. And so she did a number of things. She was a botanist, a high school teacher. You don't know what it's like to have your mother being a student teacher at your high school. It's quite an interesting experience. This is the disease. It's a fungus, again, called valley fever. And then there is I was given a very nice introduction. I do appreciate that. But I am, my PhD is in wildlife and fisheries resources at back in that day, which was about 25 years ago, and the degree areas we have now available in many schools didn't exist. And so if they accepted you into the doctoral program, you were often allowed to give work in the areas of your greatest interest. In my case, I was interested in desert aquaculture. We live in the desert, and I was most interested in how do we develop aquaculture here in the state of Arizona. This particular picture was taken in San Diego, California at the Aquaculture America conference there in 2022. The next one is going to be in Las Vegas, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. Wondering, for you to follow me in this, and we have to take you way back, not quite this far back, when I was young and in my 20s and I had hair, but way back to 1990. I was talking to some of my fraternity brothers the other day, and one of them said, who actually made me into his fraternity back in 1978, we thought there was something different about you because all you wanted to do was talk about fish. And now he's quite amazed but very, very pleased that I actually, as he said, I actually figured it out. And so hooray for Kappa Alpha Psi. At this time, at this picture, I was what's called the Extension Aquaculture Specialist for the University of Arizona. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with extension, excuse me, I didn't turn my stopwatch on. I want to make my marks here. So just a moment. There we go. Push the start button. All right. Excuse me. The purpose of cooperative extension, there are offices in every university in the United States, including the Virgin Islands and everywhere else. This organization was formed in days before we had trains, planes, and automobiles. Therefore, they were put together so that every state and every county would know how to grow food in that county. And it still exists today for that purpose. I was the first, Arizona was trying to figure out, could it support an aquaculture industry? Here we are in the middle of the desert. And I was brought in as the first person to work in this area of teaching the entire state how to grow fish or whatever, where they are in whatever county. And with the hope, I believe, of developing an industry here one day. The location where I was the University of Arizona Maricopa Bay Agricultural Center, and we were focused there specifically on taking the thousands of acres of cotton that we have, taking the water that goes into the canals, and then the water goes on to the cotton crop. But in these canals, we were putting catfish and tilapia. Catfish you are familiar with most likely. If you're not familiar with tilapia, it is an African fish of which there are 4 or 5 species that are legal in each state. And it actually worked, although the culture of tilapia in the canals wasn't quite compatible with what they have to do to farm cotton, such as herbicides and such. But the idea is basically called integrated aquaculture, and it's actually about 5,000 years old. It just keeps being reinvented over and over again because the idea works. And you'll hear a little bit more about that in the future. But what I really wanted, this is what really stimulated me. I wanted the people in the urban part of Phoenix where I lived and any other large city like Phoenix to be able to go into their backyard and harvest something like went in this plate. Everything you see on this plate, I grew in my backyard. Well, I didn't grow the cheese. I don't have cows in my backyard, but the basil and the lettuce and the beans and the tilapia that you see there, and that is been the continual dream how to make this happen. Now, when I was with Extension so long ago, to 1990, that we just did not have the technology, but today we do. A few years later, I had the opportunity to begin to exercise my knowledge in the urban areas. Every city, now this is part of telling you how to make things happen within your own disciplines. If you're going to be working in urban areas, you have to understand how a city works. I was connected enough, I suppose, to be honored to be the vice chair of writing this document. This is called the general plan. All major cities have a plan like this that tells you for the next 10 years, what is the city going to do? What are the city's goals? And I was the vice chair of writing this. And I had a major influence on writing this section called Urban Food. And so our goal was to eliminate food deserts, to develop local farmers market. We want people to have healthy food in urban villages. Now, Phoenix is divided into what's called villages. Each one is about 40 square miles in size, about 100,000 people. What amazed me, I got a chance to travel a few years ago on our 10th anniversary, and with 10th or 15th, anyway, we went to Paris. And the city of Paris, the entire city of Paris, fits into one of our urban villages, and we have 15 of them, just to give you an idea of how large Phoenix is. We want more urban agriculture, and we needed to adopt the zoning so that land use guidelines would allow for urban agriculture, and we were successful in that. But Phoenix had a problem. Again, I've always been interested in what people can do with Phoenix. We ain't got no water. We have less water than we used to, let's put it that way. This is Hoover Dam, I believe, and Las Vegas is to your left. Phoenix would be a few 100 miles southeast on the right side of this dam. And as you see, the dam is far from full. And this is the old picture. The water behind the dam has dropped further to where the legal requirements have been met for a drought, it's called a shortage, to be established, and therefore water use regulations are now kicking in. And so how are we going to have urban agriculture if the city has less and less water? And you can look this up, and it's a major issue now in Arizona, California, everyone that uses the Colorado River. In fact, many people don't even know that the Colorado River is so overused that the water no longer reaches the sea. And that has caused severe environmental problems in Mexico. Phoenix also has a lot of food deserts. Food deserts are locations where they've been identified, and there are federal maps of this. People cannot get enough healthy food. It's hard to get the healthy food. And Phoenix has 43 of them. When you add it all up, is 52.5% of the population lives in a food desert. Now, when I was first told that I was in a food desert, I went, it can't be. I mean, there's a brand new food store just down in the food mall down about a mile from here. How can this be in a food? Well, I had a car. But for people who did not have cars or had the right buses, et cetera, that food was hard to get to. And that is what precipitated the classification of food deserts. I used to ride the bus just for the heck of it because I like sustainability. I like riding buses. I rode down to the food store. I used to ride back and see some people with arms full of groceries taking that number 77 bus down to wherever they live and having to get off and walk to wherever they live. And to do that in 110, 118 degree heat, that's not a good circumstance. Excuse me. Now we have a train. The train just went in about 3 months ago. It makes things easier. But the environmental conditions have exacerbated, getting hotter and harder, so that we have to deal with this as far as anything that we do to survive in Phoenix, Arizona. Record highs, even just last week. Now, 84 degrees don't sound like much, does it? Well, for February in the middle of the winter, this is an issue, because what that means is that we have a high chance of temperatures being as it was a few years ago, weeks and weeks of 110 plus and up to 118 degrees plus. A few years ago, we reached 122, and then the infrastructure heat, the surface heat has been recorded to be up around 160 on some streets as far as the heat of the asphalt.
Dr. Brooks,
Yes.
um, can you briefly tell the students about days that are so hot that it's actually dangerous to be outside? So even if you wanted to go to the grocery store, you can't go because it's extremely hot.
That's like like every day for some parts of the year. The cities of the area, because Phoenix is a metropolitan area with lots of suburbs, set up water stations, for the unhomed. We're trying to reduce the numbers of deaths that come from people not being able to access water easily. And but city has done a good job of that, but it's a continuing battle because it doesn't seem to be getting any cooler. Recently, the air temperatures are still bouncing around. It was a nice year last year, but a nice year means getting only up to 110. So yes, there are days when it is difficult to go out in the daytime. So the only time you can go out is when you're outside, or if you did not have an air conditioner in your home, you don't go outside. Now, my grandmother, 60 years ago, she did not have an air conditioner in her home. She didn't need one back then. I was a child, but I remember how it was sitting outside with my grandfather watching shooting stars, and it was cool. It used to snow on what's called South Mountain, which is a mountain immediately south of where I live. The snow would accumulate in the winter. In the winter, there would be patches on the ground after a rainstorm on the north side of the building where there is no light that would freeze solid. We haven't seen conditions like that in decades. It's switched now, and you can find the records that shows how the heat has increased. So our challenge is, how do we create a livable city considering the environmental challenges that we have? One of the things that we want to have more trees for shade, but how do you have more trees for shade if you have a shortage of water? We want to have urban agriculture so we can grow our own food in the city and reduce temperatures. How can you do that if you have 118 degrees and a shortage of water? But we had a chance to begin to test some things that we're going to talk about right now. I'm really interested on what can we do with aquaponics, with aquaculture. If we want to have successful temperature reduction, how do we use agriculture to do it? So let's talk about that, okay? My thing is aquaculture, the farming and husbandry of aquatic animal and plants. And so the question is there an aquaculture solution? Now, before I get to that solution, I need to back up just a moment. Back in 2019, I was honored to be chosen as the principal freshwater scientist for a grant out of Florida, because one of the cooperators was Florida State University. They did the saltwater side, I did the freshwater side, and our goal was to try to get more people into aquaculture. Our goal was to try to get more people into fish farming. And so we had a chance to cover the country. We went from San Juan, Puerto Rico to Los Angeles and every place in between. This is at the University of, this is at Florida State. That's where this photograph was taken. And we talked to hundreds and hundreds of people who actually wanted to participate as fish farmers wherever they happened to be. But the challenge was that we didn't have the business models or the technology to really give them what they needed at a low cost. That's the most important thing. Growing fish is expensive, too expensive for many small farmers. So how do we do this at a comparatively low cost? So just to reiterate, we wanted to grow more food in urban areas, including food deserts. We wanted to provide direct access to a wide spectrum of crops at a low cost. The available farmland in Phoenix is rare and far in between, and when available, it's not developed. Development means there's no water, there's no infrastructure there, there's no roads, and so everything has to be done before this land can be useful. And opportunities for diverse participation and ownership are rare. We need more of that. It's important for everyone to own their own farm. It's great to know to buy food from your local supermarket. We are blessed to have that resource. But it's also good to be able to grow your own food in your own backyard. And that turned out to be the solution that we decided to use, to activate the backyards in a manner where they can grow food for the residents. This is a building, this is a house with a solar panel. The basic idea here is to take a known technology, such as solar panels. I took the image out because I didn't want to take too long with this presentation, but not too far from me on Interstate 8 heading for San Diego, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of solar panels. That's great. And the clean energy coming from them is amazing. Most of them are photovoltaic. Some are a photo steam method, but they are building more and more and more of these to provide constant clean energy for our region. But then putting them on your house gives you the opportunity to be not only an owner, but to generate money from this if the economies are right, depending on where you are. And that means that if you have one of these systems on your house, the cost of the energy coming out of this is often lower than the cost of the energy that you can buy from the utility, which allows you to make the difference between those two rates. It's called a penny saved is a penny earned. And can we do that in our backyards? And that is where aquaponics come in. First, do I have any questions before I drone on here? Okay, hearing none.
They might be waiting until the end of your presentation.
Oh, no problem.
Wait. I'm sorry, doctor. I did have a question.
Yes.
So, why is getting the zoning change so important that it couldn't stop doing it on the individual level in their own communities?
Oh, that is an excellent question. Every community is different here in Arizona, whether it's Phoenix or Tempe or Mesa. These are all suburbs. Each one of these cities has completely different zoning rules. Phoenix promotes urban agriculture, written entire plans to encourage urban agriculture. Other cities don't want to see it. And so the zoning does not allow you to grow things in your backyard. That is the nature of cities. Cities are compromises. Everyone who lives in the city are working on a compromise of rules and regulations. Someone moving into my neighborhood, for example, might not want to see chickens next door. No, chickens are loud and they're noisy and fly around, and people don't want to be near a farm. While me moving in, I want a farm in my backyard. And so that I can put a farm in my backyard with certain stipulations is a compromise of the city rules, meaning that if the house next door is too close to my chickens, I can't have my chickens. But if I can get the space as specified by the compromise rule, I can have my chickens, and the person who doesn't want chickens can't do anything about it unless one gets loose and lands in their backyard. And so this,
Well, even I'm
yes,
sorry, but even in those areas where, let's say, it's not permitted or it's restricted because of
mhm,
zoning,
yes,
and I understand that they wouldn't be able to have chickens, but couldn't they do it like on a smaller scale where, like, hey, I'm just doing vegetables, so I reduce my food bill by, at least $50 or $100. Something is better than nothing.
that's completely up to the city. And also this wonderful thing they call an HOA, Home Owners Association. And HOAs, a whole nother set of rules play out, and they might not want you to have anything. And we do have HOAs that are like that. And so it depends on where you are. Some can seem unreasonable, but that is the nature of living in an urban area where you're trying to compromise and make everybody happy. And it is definitely a challenge in doing so. I happened to move in 2005 into an area that was part of an old orchard. It was part Phoenix is all farms. You'll notice when you see the map again that Phoenix is on a grid system. Those grids are the edges of the old farm fields, and it has filled in those old farm fields into this city of 1.6 million people. But again, in some parts of town, in some neighborhoods, chickens, fish, whatever else, you can't have. But in other parts of town, there are chickens running down the street. So it depends on where you are. And you can petition your city council person and your city to make changes, and there are things like you should see this shirt here. I'm on the city, not on the city council. I'm sorry, that is a pipe dream. I would have loved to have been on the city council, but I'm on the part of the city planning commission, and it has allowed me to learn how the system works. And so you can petition us on South Mountain Village or go to your city council person to petition and hopefully be able to make a rule change so that it meets your needs for agriculture, but also the needs of the people who live around you. Again, for example, chickens. Okay, I got my chickens, but I can't have roosters. Why can't I have roosters? Because they're loud and crow all night and all morning. But you can have hens, and you can produce eggs. Everything's a compromise. Did that answer
And
your
then,
question?
yes, sir. And then the other question that I had was, can you describe the difference between the temperature in relation to the humidity in comparison to Florida? Because
Ooh.
110, 120 sounds like the devil's oven for me, but there has to be a difference in the heat. Like, we sweat over here like a gallon of water, and it's like 95 or whatever.
Yes, I know I can't give you those precise numbers, but I never looked them up for, say, in Miami. But you just expressed part of it. You have water. The reason why we cool down is because of sweat. And the sweat doesn't work if your air is very high in humidity. Here we have very little humidity in the air, so our sweat glands work very well. Thus, it's cooler to us at 110 than it will be to you with a humidity of 80%, for example. So that is,
So have
yes,
you been here? Have you been here? Can you
yes.
say, like, oh, your heat is worse than our heat?
Well, it's the same temperature. It depends on your ability to sweat. And if there's so much water in the air that you don't lose, well, sweat takes the heat off your body. Okay, that's just physics. But if it's so hot that your body cannot sweat well, you stay hot. While here, the same temperature, because we sweat easily, the sweat takes away from our body more heat than it would where you are. So the same temperatures would seem hotter where you are than it does here.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're
I have
welcome.
a quick
Is
question.
there? Yes, ma'am.
So I know you mentioned that over there at Phoenix it's not or it's very hot because there's not a lot of humidity. And you also mentioned that the Colorado River, like it's getting like it's smaller and smaller because of all the uses. So
Yeah.
if it was not used in the past, do you think that the humidity will be a little bit higher, or it
Yes.
has nothing to do with that?
Yes. Phoenix actually sits on 7 rivers. That's how cities, in fact, most cities, if you look around the country, the major cities are sit on rivers. Whether it's New Orleans or I think Philadelphia does, but there are many cities that sit on Denver. They all sit on rivers. And when farming began here 5,000 years ago with the with the I used to work for them. They're now called the Gila River Indian Community. Um, Phoenix had 7 flowing rivers and a vast forest of a certain kind of tree called a mesquite. These were called mosquitoes bosques or bosques, depending on who is the authority you're talking to. The Native Americans used to show me how they would have to ride through many of their lands with their feet up on the horses because there was so much water at that time. The Gila River supplied the Salt and Gila River coming together, and then another river, the Santa Cruz, actually provided enough water so that there was once talk of creating a series of locks that would go all the way from Phoenix to Yuma down on the Colorado River, so that the river would have been navigable. That's very interesting to see how that would have worked. But the water was unstable. And that is, there will be years of more water than we could possibly use, and years when there's no water at all. In fact, those major droughts are why, in the past, are why people moved out of the Phoenix area in the thousands of years ago. And even today, I remember the floods and such. In the 60s and the 50s, there was a lot of water, and then it went away, and then it came back. And that was common. And so they made a series of dams from Phoenix all the way up through other parts of the state that allowed us to have a consistent source of water down here in Phoenix. But that also, at the same time, dried up all the rivers that actually went through Phoenix because they were dammed up and all the water was now being pushed into canal systems. The loss of the trees significantly increased the temperatures because there was no longer the evaporative cooling that came from these trees. Now, there's a lot more science there, but that's just the nutshell. I forgot. And there's also the heat island effect. When you start replacing your farm fields with homes and asphalts and concrete, that all absorbs heat. I can remember my grandparents' house in the evenings, it was like 75 degrees at night. Now it often stays above 90. It never cools off. So these are the sustainability issues. There was a great book written by, I can't remember the professor. I had a nice talk with him when he came through town, called Bird on Fire, where he calls Phoenix the most unsustainable city in the world. But everyone disagreed with him, but he was just trying to discuss what he saw. And to understand everything I'm telling you right now, I would suggest that you pick up that book, Bird on Fire. Any more? Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to move on now because I only got so much time to do this. So I have to power through here. So what aquaponics is, it's urban, it's integrated aquaculture, agriculture in its latest iteration. It's where you are growing fish. Fish have a waste product just like we do. That waste product is now in the water, and and inside of this, we place devices for bacteria to grow on. The bacteria convert the waste product, which was ammonia, eventually into something called nitrate, and nitrate is plant food. And so the plants then polish the water of the nitrate, cleaning it so that the fish can live and prosper. That is aquaponics. Excuse me. And it works very well. But this is what aquaponics usually looks like. These systems were designed about 2000 or so to take advantage of this recirculating aquaculture concept. And you see, you have a fish tank there, usually was called an IBC tote. And these are containers that you carry things in, carry liquids in, but they are food safe as long as you clean them. Well, you can't clean them. So you try to get one that is still clean, no oils or anything, and you can keep fish in it. The fish, the waste from the fish are captured. The water is cleaned by the bacteria. That's what you see, the rocks or the filters or the deep water culture on the bottom one. That clean water, that filter, water with the nitrate in it, you have the beds for the plants. The plants capture that and grow, cleaning the water, sending it back to the fish. Unfortunately, these systems that were designed around 2002, I think they were designed originally in Australia, worked very well, but they were complex and could be expensive. And it seems, as my own explanation, that they haven't been able to grow enough food versus the cost to really make them worthwhile. But everything does not have to remain the same. There we go. Around Phoenix, everywhere we had these things. Everybody got a swimming pool in the backyard, and many of them are these plastic pools like this, usually full of green water growing mosquitoes. My hypothesis, why are we doing this? Why can't we figure out a way to grow food in this and get some real benefit? I'm biased. Okay, I'm biased because some people think the swimming pools are really valuable. I got one, I know, but I'm biased about growing food in the backyard. So why can't we grow food in the backyard using these devices that are just sitting there in most houses that have bought one? So using a little design thinking, you can look that up. It's a way of taking concepts, reimagining them, and turning them into a variety of things. So there's a paper by me called Design Thinking. You can look it up in Aquaponics magazine. But using a little of that, we actually figured it out. We figured out how we can use a circular pool such as this to grow a lot of different kinds of crops, more than 100 different kinds of crops. We figured out how to grow for the benefit of the local community, which is what you see here. It worked very well, but it was bulky and it was not space efficient. So, let me go back just a second. Okay. The aquaponic concept worked, but then our lack of open space, we had to use the food deserts, and we wanted people there don't get food easily, so we wanted to put these into food deserts so that folks can get the maximum benefit. And then in 2000, we ran into this. You all remember COVID? This is just to the north of my home. The mountain you see in front of you is South Mountain, and I live in the foothills. Driving a few miles north of my house on 16th Street one day, this was close to Thanksgiving, I saw this line of cars waiting. And I had to turn back around and find out what are they waiting on. I went down to the end, turned the corner, and went on inside, and there was a church that was giving away Thanksgiving turkeys. Food was so short that people were standing in line, cars were in line, just to get a single Thanksgiving turkey. As NPR said, empty shelves, high prices. It was real. And so in response, the city looked at how can we help our residents. That's in the general plan. And they came up with a project called the Phoenix Backyard Garden Program. This is what's called a vertical farm. Vertical farms are amazing. They produce enormous amounts of food. One vertical farm is supposed to be able to produce as much lettuce as 300 acres of land, and they can do that. The challenge, however, that vertical farms are very, very expensive to build. You can't build many of them. Few people can buy one, and if they do, they're not really growing the kinds of food that are needed by the local residents in this food emergency that Phoenix and many other cities were. I was visiting Dallas, a fraternity brother of mine, and was it Dallas or Houston? It was Houston, and they had similar food lines that he showed me. So this program that was done by the city of Phoenix, its purpose was to put gardens into backyards in food deserts. One of the types of garden was a standard raised bed garden. Another type was something called a layer garden that was more of a wicking bed design that could grow a lot more food. And then, of course, aquaponics. We put 52 aquaponic systems into backyards. And they grew a lot of, for anyone who listened, because you have good farmers and you have bad farmers. For the bad farmers, it didn't work so well, but for the good farmers, they are still working today, years after the program has ended. But one thing that we forget is we're going to have food, and we're going to have folks who are going to use these systems after a program like the backyard program is over. You got to have a business model. You got to have some way of people to manage their money so that they can continue to prosper using this method of aquaponics. But if you don't, the cost of the food is not worth it. And you might as well go on down to the local grocery store. This particular diagram came from the USDA and was published through National Public Radio. It tells us how much food can you that an American eats. An American eats about 2,000 pounds of food every year, 1,996.3, according to the graph. Okay, that's an average between men and women. The graph here shows that you eat 134 pounds of sugar. We eat a lot of sugar. We drink 181 gallons of milk and other related products. But the encouraging thing is that 40% or more of the food that you see on this graph, we can actually grow in our backyards if we have the right technology. Now, vegetables we can grow. Now, that's not a vegetable. That is a fruit. But the USDA considers a pepper a vegetable, a tomato a vegetable. But scientifically, they're fruit. So you can grow fruit. You can grow citrus fruit. You can't make butter. It's too hard. Or it's hard to have a cow in your backyard. But chickens, we have chickens. You can grow fish, eggs, and that when you add it up, that's about 30%, 30 to 40% of your diet you can actually grow in your backyard. And that's what we tried to do. I mentioned this earlier. The last time the nation tried this was the Victory Gardens of World War II. They were amazing. Originally, they were called the War Gardens, but this is anecdotal information, but it seems that Dr. George Washington Carver, writing about the victory of gardening, encouraged the federal government. This is anecdotal. There's nothing official about this, but that's what the word says, to change the name to the Victory Gardens. And we figured out how to use the aquaponics to grow all the food you see here to the left, maybe actually more. So what happened to them? Well, after the war, people had supermarkets and the government was no longer supporting it. So we really didn't have the data from 80 years to now of any new way to run the kind of business model necessary to keep these farms alive. However, in all honesty, the Victory Gardens didn't actually end. In other parts of the world, there was a new name for the exact same thing. They're called smallholder. And today, these smallholder farms, just like the Victory Gardens and the small aquaponics you see now, are actually growing between 20 and 30% of the food in the world, just not here in the United States. And we are now taking advantage of that 80 years of research and business knowledge on how to create smallholder farms that are manageable and sustainable here in the United States. So we can take these small aquaponic systems, as you see here, and make them prosperous so that they can consistently grow food, as you see here. This is a garden along with catfish that is growing about everything that you can think of for a summer garden, from honeydew melons, watermelons, okra, all of that different food, and up to, if you're really good at it, a good farmer can do 400 to 500 pounds over a year's time. And you can see how they bulk up when a good farmer gets his or her hands on it. The results. This is City of Phoenix. You can see the circle down at the bottom. These are the villages that the systems were placed into. I live in South Mountain. I've always lived in South Mountain. I'm 70 years old, and I've always lived there except for the years that I was chasing a degree from one city to another. And the program, in my humble opinion, was successful. And it served about 40% of the city's population lived in these areas. So it was not a small idea, but it covered a lot of space, and we got a lot of good data that tells us how this can be managed successfully, how we can grow all the kinds of food that you see here, along with fish. It worked. Now the challenge we have is to take what we've learned and to reproduce it based upon private funding sources as a full-scale business so that it can be duplicated nationwide. I already said this. Okay. We also grew flowers. And let's look at the fish. These are catfish. They were grown about everyone grew somewhere between 15 and 30 pounds of catfish, considering that people actually eat about 30 pounds of fish a year. This is more fish than what they need if all you want to eat is catfish. Now, I can eat all catfish. I love catfish, but most people don't love catfish fish as an exclusive product, but you can grow a lot of it. The same thing is true. These are the catfish that we grew, and the same thing is true with tilapia. Again, tilapia are an African fish and can grow about 30 pounds. The only problem with tilapia is that they don't like cold water. The catfish don't like hot water, so we have to find a balance in that. But the tilapia we could not grow in the winter until about 3 years ago, when there's suddenly heat that allows them to survive throughout the winter. And then also the other thing about tilapia is that they fly. That's a metaphor, but if you leave your tank open, you will find that tilapia on another part of your yard. They're very good at jumping, or jumping to the plant tank where they don't need to be. They breed very easily, and you'll end up with more fish than you can possibly use. But all of them very very small, not full market sized. One more thing that we were successful at, in that every one of our farms was approved by Arizona Department of Game and Fish to have the fish that they were growing. So therefore, they were certified fish farms. Now it's nice that I wrote the rules. I helped to write the rules on urban aquaculture back in 1998. I've been around a long time. And it was the University of Arizona, Arizona Game and Fish, and Arizona Department of Agriculture. And we got together to make aquaculture livestock. Before then, fish were not livestock in Arizona. They belong to the state. If we're going to have an aquaculture industry, the fish have to be owned within some legal structure. And so we were successful in doing that. And most of the rules are still the same. They've been changed a little bit, but most of the rules are still the same that we wrote back in 1998. My wife, who is a native of Memphis, born and raised in Coldwater, Mississippi. A few days ago, we pulled one of the catfish out of the freezer. She did some Mississippi magic on me. Honestly, she's that I can't do. And that fish was amazing. No mud taste whatsoever. Fish taste the way they've been raised. If you get a mud cat out of a canal, that's the way it's going to taste. But in this system and many other aquaculture systems, that's not there. And the catfish can be absolutely amazing. Also, we have papers that tell us that we can indeed grow our food in these systems for less money than it costs to buy it at the store. So therefore, our food was costing us somewhere, initial calculations, around $1 a pound, while the same food in the store was costing $2 or more. Therefore, if we ate our own food that we grew, that dollar that we saved goes back in our pockets. And according to, if I read them correctly, to federal law, there's no tax on that. You can't tax savings. And so penny saved penny saved and penny earned, as Benjamin Franklin did say. New species. These are my favorite animals. We need more fish.
All right, so Dr. Brooks, I just want to highlight we have roughly 12 minutes left.
Then let me move fast then.
All right, so we want to have at least like 5 minutes for some Q&A, but we got about 12 minutes left. It's going to end at 9:45.
Okay, then let me move fast then. These were my favorite animal. These are the giant freshwater prawns. They are very, very hard to grow. We'll figure it out one of these days, because these can now grow as big as a small lobster, and they taste like lobster. I recently saw them in a fries down the street for $21.95 a pound. So these are going to be a welcome addition to our farmers if we could get them to grow correctly. This is a bluegill. It's really hard to get a bluegill to grow this big. So one more thing that we have to figure out. We did a lot of work with children in grade schools. They have their own systems, and we'll go there and teach them all kinds of things about business and mathematics and science and engineering. Everything STEM teaches can be taught with aquaponics. We taught people culinary. If you're going to be growing a lot of food, you got to know how to preserve it. This is our COVID room. Kind of a root cellar in our basement, and much of this stuff here was grown in aquaponics. And then there's the business part of it. This shows you everything. You can see the recording, everything that you have to have in place for this idea to grow an industry in your city. And all of these are opportunities for new businesses in your part of your city. we talked about all of the hot part. We got that down. This is a real picture. This is one of our dust storms. And when these could come in, they leave a mess in the aquaponics. But we've learned how to do it successfully, even with these enormous dust storms that we get. And of course, we are now using this extremely dense shade screening to help our plants survive when it's 118. Got new plants coming in from the University of Arizona. We got a problem with hard water, and I didn't want to get to this guy. There's a thing called IPM. We have in any kind of garden, you have something that wants to eat your garden. Most of the time you have insects, or maybe some bunnies, or maybe a rat or two. This is what we got, even in Phoenix. This is a collared peccary, otherwise known as a javelina or desert pigs. And we've had farmers, these things, a herd of them came in and ate the aquaponics, which was unfortunate. We need some more work on that. Finally, concentrated fish waste. We collect the fish waste and it goes on trees and other crops, making a more sustainable use of the excess water. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I guess it's more of a fun question, but as far as before I want to ask my question, I just want to say your background, specifically your parents, is very fascinating and very interesting. So I just want to say, due to it being like, part of American history, I just want to say that's incredible. But my question would be, what is your favorite dish that I believe, or I guess you said that your wife is the one that cooks in that?
We both cook, but she can cook fish better than I can. So here we go.
Okay, so I guess what is your favorite dish made out of your aquaponics garden or
okay. Well, I grew up in San Diego and here in Phoenix, and so my favorite dishes tend to be extracted from Mexico. So I guess fish tacos. No, I often tell someone I'm now going to go get a taco. And so, but anything such as the one you saw on the screen, a simple meal of tilapia and beans, or anything that you can make out of a catfish or a tilapia is really good with me.
Okay, well, I definitely have to try tilapia tacos because I've never tried them. I'm Mexican, so I'm just very like, okay, that's definitely something I definitely have to add to my radar.
Yes, please do, and come up with some new recipes for me. Thank you. Oh, by the way, tilapia aren't like catfish; they have no taste. Okay, a catfish tastes like a catfish. Tilapia tastes like whatever you put on it.
So it's like cod. It's very like not bland, but just very like whatever spices you put on it, it's gonna taste like the spice. Okay.
Yes. Next question.
Hey, I want to something. What is the average time that requires for a backyard farming or aquaponic system, like the one that you showed, to become like fully productive and like consistent?
It depends on the time of year, but if the weather likes you, they can fill out like that in 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you.
What about the catfish and tilapia? Because they do take a little bit longer to reach full size from juvenile.
Yes, they do. We have much to my surprise, because the conditions are somewhat different than they are in a fish pond. I expected them to take longer, but they have not. So we reach market size of 1.5 pounds in about 8 to 9 months.
Okay, but it's not that long. I thought it was gonna be like more, I don't know, like more than 6 months to grow, like the full.
It is more than 6 months, but it's 8 to 9, it's 8 to 9 months, and that's much faster than I expected as well.
It makes it sustainable, right?
I'm sorry, what?
It makes it completely sustainable, right?
Well, it's not completely sustainable because you got to use electricity. Now, you can increase the sustainability by using solar panels. I designed it for that, to have low energy needs, and batteries. So that makes it better. And we've also put some things called passive backups. That means when we have a dust storm, we lose the power. The problem with aquaponics is when you lose the power, all your fish can die because the source of air is cut off. We have now a passive system that allows the fish to last for a number of hours. It's not perfect, not panacea, but it can allow fish to last a number of hours, maybe 5 or 6 hours until the power comes back on. So that helps in its sustainability. We also have to use seeds, and we have to plant the seeds, and all of that is made out of plastic, but I'm really trying to get away from. So we still have some ways to go as to be getting it more and more sustainable.
Doctor, is there any other fish that you could use besides catfish and tilapia for basically the aquaponics?
Yes, we're looking. Arizona has very strict food fish restrictions, and so we can only use catfish and tilapia here as far as food fish. You can use carp. Carp are not normally a food fish, but many cultures know how to cook them properly, and they get huge, and they're not on the restricted fish list. So carp that you can use. We're looking for other species like that bluegill that I showed you. We need panfish like that beyond the tilapia and that we can have legally, but they take a long time to grow, so we still have all of that work to do. The giant freshwater prawns, great return on investment if you can get them not to eat each other. So working on all of those things to meet the need that you just suggested. We need more fish to grow. 2 is not enough.
Do you use, I'll refer to them as like fiber blocks to plant the seeds and for the hydroponics?
Yes, we do use something like that. Those fiber blocks, they call chlor, make a mess. They do. And they also change the water quality. So we use a different product that does not change the water quality and to use and plant in the aquaponics. So yes.
So what, like lava rocks?
No, lava rocks is lava rocks is used in aquaponics. Those edges are sharp. The roots like sharp edges no more than your hands do. So yes, you can use lava rock. We have what's called a floating bed system, a deep water system, so that we can float the rafts on top and have other things underneath them. So we don't use rocks for that, but we use this material. I'm not trying to promote any brands right now.
Well, Elliot, let me just Elliot, if you want the materials, we actually have this at MDC Padron campus. We have different materials to grow seeds, and I do want to highlight that I have 2 students in class right now. Um, Angeline and Melanie, they're actually going to put together a hydroponic system, and then they're going to grow some crops in our Zen garden. So, Elliot, if you're interested, I would invite you to link up with them, and then you can help us plant some seeds and grow some plants.
Sounds like fun.
Grow some fish too.
We are growing fish, but I've actually transitioned. So we still have freshwater prawns, but right now I have a couple of students working with ornamental fish. So we harvested the tilapia and catfish, and now we're growing Ameca splendens, cherry shrimp, and we have some peacock cichlids and stuff. But in the past, we had bluegills, catfish, and Hawaiian pink tilapia.
Okay, Hawaiian pink. Oh yes, that was the first fish tilapia I ever grew. They're across tilapia mozambica. I mean, Oreochromis mozambicus and your Oreochromis eurolepis hornorum. They originally came to Arizona, and then they went. Oh no, this guy brought them from Florida to Hawaii, and then they came back to Arizona. So I'm very familiar with them. I thought they were goldfish.
All right, well, I think we have Daniela, Michael. I think they have a couple of questions. By the way, um, for those of you who are still here, thank you for attending. Thank you, Dr. Brooks, for your presentation. If you have to go, you are free to go. However, if you still want to stick around for some Q&A, I'll keep the Zoom open for 10 more minutes. But by 9:55, I'm going to close out. But for everybody else, if you got to go, you got to go. If you have questions, I'll keep the Zoom open for another additional 11 minutes. All right.
Hi, can I make a question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. My question is, what do you think are the main barriers that prevent wider adoption of urban aquaponics and community food industry development in the communities? It can be maybe a lack of awareness among people or economic barriers. What do you think would be the most effective first step to overcome that?
I'm actually presenting a paper on that next week. So,
Oh, that's great.
yes, yes, because I've been asking that question. If you go to Google trends and put in backyard aquaponics, you'll see a trend line that is declining. I did disagree with many of those. I respect the opinion who say that backyard aquaponics is increasing because the data doesn't show it. And so the question is, what is happening? And the technical explanation would take too long. I teach a whole class on that technical explanation. I was simply saying that the old-fashioned design, the old designs are difficult. Okay, they're difficult to put together. They tend to leak. They're all and they are difficult to manage. That's been the history as I understand it. Now I'm been doing this long enough that nothing is difficult for me to handle in aquaponics, but I can see why many would find these classic designs more difficult and they don't produce as much. That's one reason why I developed the newer version, because it's just overwhelmingly productive at a very low cost of construction. The ease in operation makes it possible for people to operate these easily and for a long time. And when they've learned that particular trick, because you have to be a good farmer, but still it's easier to use, that makes them more accessible for people to use. The challenge is now, someone once said, in order to make money, you have to focus on a problem, find a solution, but then lower the risk of people adopting it. The price of the new technique is far below the old one, but is not well known as of yet. I'm hoping that a newer technique that takes most of the risk out of doing the older technique can turn that trend line around. There's a professor named Clayton Christensen, Harvard, who characterized this. He called it catalytic innovation. If you can take something that's very complex and make it simpler, it gives access of more people to use it. And that's what we're hoping on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your response. And thank you for your presentation and all the content that you gave us. It was really interesting.
Thank you so much. Who's next?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm curious. When you were talking about the vertical farming system, do you know if there's any difference, like in flavor or nutritional quality compared to the traditional farmer?
That's a good question, and one that I'm reluctant to answer, not because there's not an answer for that, but I don't know. Okay, no, the first rule in science is to say I don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. And so I don't know. I can say that the cost of building these vertical farms is what they call CapEx. That means that is necessary for the crops that you grow to have a very high price that people will pay. And lettuce is the primary thing they grow, lettuce, strawberry, etc., so that can meet those high price needs so the farms can be profitable. But when I look at how do I grow this in urban neighborhoods, man does not live by tilapia and lettuce alone. You've got to be able to grow everything else. And some of the things that we need to grow, such as cabbages and whatever else, are not harvested easily, but mechanically as lettuce is. And their number, they get really big while lettuce stays small, and they take longer to grow. All of these things add up to them at the moment not being suitable for the vertical farms. And if you can't grow these, and also these foods are what the local residents want more of. Every neighborhood has a different plant they like, and mine is collard greens. So, Angie had some food out, and all that folks bought around our home was collard greens. And so you have to be able to grow the kinds of food that the neighborhood wants if you want to be able to feed the neighborhood. And it's much more than lettuce. And also lettuce kind of goes away. Our window to grow lettuce is now like 3 months. And so for the most of the year, we're growing foods that the vertical farmers can't use. No, they're all inside. Did that kind of answer your question?
Oh, yeah, that helps. That's interesting. Thank you.
Okay, what did I miss?
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Irene? I have a question.
Okay.
I know this might sound a little bit far-fetched, but do you think hydroponics might be a possible like stepping stone to helping world hunger, making like a very big well sort of like thing and helping communities that are they're struggling a little bit?
Yes, I most certainly do. Hydroponics is a little bit more expensive than aquaponics, but it's also much, much simpler. You're only taking care of plants. You don't have to worry about fish. And so a lot of people are only growing hydroponically and eschewing the fish because the fish can make things so much more complex. There's a growing amount of data that says that the aquaponics can be more cost effective. But again, growing fish is a bit more riskier than just growing your plants. So to answer your question is yes, but you got to do those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, doctor, I had one more question in regards to the vertical farming, I think it was called.
Yes.
So it sounds like it's not only expensive because of the square footage, but because of the power, and it looks like it's an indoor type of thing. Couldn't they do that in like a outdoor scenario and maybe just put up like those nets that they use for like Top Golf to keep it more screened in from like insects and animals?
In Phoenix, it would be difficult. I know that they have tried vertical farms in different configurations over the past 10, 15 years, but it seems that for those people who are investing in it, they are now limiting it to indoor applications. This also allows you to grow your plants year round far more easily than you can on the outside. You won't have to deal with 115 degrees, 120 degrees, and you won't have to deal with freezing if you're inside of a building. Many of the vertical farms, however, use artificial light, and that adds to the cost again. So they're putting a lot of money into it. There are a lot of them who are not doing well, but I'm sure with the amount of money that they are spending on making vertical farms more practical, that they will one day find the problems that will find the solutions that will make them more practical.
Well, no, yeah, because I understand because of the dust storms and maybe even here in Florida where we get hurricanes.
Yes.
Things like those places probably are second or third on the list. But like here in Florida, you could do something that crops every year and then just make sure that it's before the hurricane season, just in case we catch one.
Yes. No, I've been working on a different business model. That there's lots of people putting millions of dollars into the vertical farms. They don't need my help. But in the populations that I serve that need basically the ability to grow like a vertical farm in their backyards for much, 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 much less money, I've been focusing on how to provide those systems as well as the business models that will allow them to continue to thrive economically. So there are folks who are doing some really great work with vertical farms, but my work is in a different area. So forgive me that I don't know as much as I would like to in providing you an accurate answer.
No, it's great, and I just
All right,
think I
Elliot,
just think outside the box.
all right, well, thank you, Elliot. I just want to highlight Dr. Brooks. Elliot and I often have really good conversations in our environmental science course.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely appreciate that. But with that being said, it is late. It's almost 10 o'clock here on the east side, or the eastern side of the United States. And so we're going to conclude this presentation. We want to thank you for presenting to us. Thank you, audience, for your questions, comments, and concerns.
Please send the link.
Yes, I will stop recording and then send you the link as soon as I get it. I'll do that probably tomorrow. All right.
All right. Thank you.